All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Lee. I'm going to continue reading Enoch. We left off at chapter 82 last time. I left a link for the Sacred Text website that has the R.H. Charles version, sacredtext.com. This is translated out of the Ethiopian Bible, 1917. Found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, quoted in the New Testament by the Messiah, by Peter, by Jude, by Paul, quoted in the Old Testament. The first scriptures, the first to learn to write according to Jubilees, also found in the Dead Sea Scrolls written by Moses. The oldest book, oldest scriptures. So quoted several times in the Bible. Several times. And they all had access to it until the truth was hidden from us. So, starting at chapter 83. And I left a link for the Levite Bible also. They have a R.H. Charles translation of their own that they've reworked a little bit. Very good. You can get it on Amazon. Actually, I got it around here somewhere. Let me show you my copy right quick. Alright, in case you want to pick it up for yourself, I got this R.H. Charles. Contains Enoch, contains Jubilees, contains some other really good ones too. This is the Levite Bible, black and white. This is the Levite Bible, R.H. Charles, hardcover and in color. I've got Joseph Lumpkin Enoch translation over there. Sefer translation of Enoch, the Hallel Scripture translation of Enoch. My favorite are R.H. Charles and Levite Bible. So, and that's what this is, R.H. Charles. So, if you want to pick them up yourself, I figured I'd share that with you. All right, we'll start chapter 83. And now, my son Methuselah, I will show thee all my visions, which I have seen, recounted them before thee. 2 visions I saw before I took a wife, and the one was quite unlike the other. And this is Enoch talking to his son, Methuselah. The first when I was learning to write, the second before I took thy mother, when I saw a terrible vision. And regarding them I prayed to Yahweh. I had laid me down in the house of my grandfather Mahalel, when I saw in a vision how the heaven collapsed and was borne off and fell to the earth. And when it fell to the earth, I saw how the earth was swallowed up in a great abyss, and mountains were suspended on mountains, and hills sank down on hills, and high trees were rent from their stems, and hurled down and sunk in the abyss. And thereupon a word fell into my mouth, and I lifted up my voice to cry aloud, and said, The earth is destroyed. And this is the flood vision that Enoch had. And my grandfather Mahalel waked me, and as I lay near him, and said unto me, Why dost thou cry so, my son? Why dost thou make such lamentation? And I recounted to him the whole vision which I had seen. And he said unto me, A terrible thing hast thou seen, my son, and of grave moment is thy dream. Vision as to the secrets of all the sin of the earth. It must sink into the abyss and be destroyed with a great destruction. And now, my son, arise and make petition to the Yahweh of glory, since thou art a believer. He's got faith. He's a believer. That a remnant may remain on the earth, and that he may not destroy the whole earth. My son, from heaven all this will come upon the earth, and upon the earth there will be great destruction. After that I arose and prayed and implored and besought and wrote down my prayer for the generations of the world. See, the generations, all the generations of the world. And I will show everything to thee, my son Methuselah. And when I had gone forth below and seen the heaven, and the sun rising in the east, and the moon setting in the west, and a few stars, and the whole earth, and everything as he had known it from the beginning, in the beginning, Then I blessed Yahweh of judgment and extolled him, because he had made the sun to go forth from the windows of the east. And he ascended and rose on the face of the heaven, and set out and kept traversing the path shown unto him. So the sun moves and the moon moves. That's how he created it. So why are we being lied to that the earth moves around the sun? Good question to ask yourself. And why people are talking against people that are sharing the truth with people. That's part of the truth. Chapter 84. And I lifted up my hands in righteousness, and blessed the Holy and Great One, and spake with the breath of my mouth, and with the tongue of flesh, which Elohim hath made. Elohim's another word for God, except Elohim can mean more than one. El means one. Elohim means multiple. And Yahusha and Yahuwah are the creators. Yahusha created with the Father. So Elohim has made for the children of flesh of men that they should speak therewith. See, Yahusha was a creator too. So it's Elohim, not God. That they should speak therewith, and he gave them breath and a tongue and a mouth that they should speak therewith. Blessed be thou, O Yahweh, King, great and mighty in thy greatness, master of the whole creation of the heaven, King of kings. And who's the King of kings? Yahusha, King of kings, and Elohim of the whole world. And thy power and kingship and greatness abide forever and ever, and throughout all generations thy dominion, and all the heavens are thy throne forever, and the whole earth thy footstool forever and ever. For thou hast made, and thou rulest all things, and nothing is too hard for thee. Wisdom departs not from the place of thy throne, nor turns away from thy presence. And that reminds me. Found no place. Interesting verse from Job here. Job 28:12. But where shall wisdom be found, and where is the place of understanding? And it says, wisdom went forth. Maybe that's in a removed book. Yet no man remember that same poor man. Sad. Yeah, it's Proverbs 8:22. Yeah, that's the one. Proverbs 8. While we're talking about wisdom, we might as well explore a little bit. The scriptures are a treasure trove. Let's see, Proverbs 8:22. Yeah, we might as well read the whole thing. Proverbs chapter 8. Doth not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth in the top of high places, by the way in the places of the paths. She crieth at the gates, at the entry of the city, at the coming in at the doors. Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of man. O ye simple, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be of an understanding heart. Hear, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. For my mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing froward or perverse in them. They are all plain to him that understandeth, and right to them that find knowledge. Receive my instruction, and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. The fear of Yahweh is to hate evil, pride, arrogancy, and the evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate. Counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. I am understanding, I have strength. By me kings reign, and princes decree justice. By me princes rule, and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. I love them that love me, And those that seek me early shall find me. Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yea, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. I lead in the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of judgment, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures. Yahweh possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. So before creation. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no fountains abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth. When he established the clouds above. When he strengthened the fountains of the deep. When he gave the sea his decree, that the waters should not pass his commandment. When he appointed the foundations of the earth. Then I was by him, as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in the habitable part of his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. Now therefore hearken unto me, O ye children, for blessed are they that keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise, and refuse it not. Blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the post of my doors. For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of Yahweh. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All that hate me love death. And it would not surprise me if they continued on. They like to break the chapters in the wrong place. Wisdom hath builded her house, she hath hewn out her 7 pillars. She hath killed her beasts, she hath mingled her wine, she hath also furnished her table. She hath sent forth her maidens, she crieth upon the highest places of the city. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, Come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish, and live, and go in the way of understanding. He that reproveth a scorner getteth to himself shame, and he that rebuketh a wicked man getteth himself a blot. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. For by me thy days shall be multiplied, and the years of thy life shall be increased. If thou be wise, thou shalt be wise for thyself, but if thou scornest, thou alone shalt bear it. A foolish woman is clamorous, she is simple, and knoweth nothing. For she sitteth at the door of her house, on a seat in the high places of the city, to call passengers who go right on their ways. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, Stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. Wisdom, good woman, and the harlot, foolishness. Also, got to be Apocrypha. If I can find it. Wisdom of Solomon. I think it's 2nd Esdras. No. Maybe it's Wisdom of Solomon. Nostrils of smoke. It's a big book. Sometimes it's hard to remember where it's at. Pretty sure it's second Esdras. When wisdom went forth and found no dwelling place among men, so returned she returned to her dwelling. And for thou hast made, and thou rulest all things, and nothing is too hard for thee. Wisdom departs not from the place of thy throne, nor turns away from thy presence. And thou knowest and seest and hearest everything. And there is nothing hidden from thee, for thou seest everything. And now the angels of thy heavens are guilty of trespass, and upon the flesh of men abideth thy wrath until the great day of judgment. And now, O Yahweh, and Lord and great King, Yahusha, I implore and beseech thee to fulfill my prayer, to leave me a posterity on earth, and not destroy all the flesh of man, and to make the earth without inhabitant, so that there should be an eternal destruction. And now, my master, destroy from the earth the flesh which has aroused thy wrath, but the flesh of righteousness and uprightness establish as a plant of the eternal seed. Messiah, Jubilees, chapter 16, I think. Eternal plan of righteousness. And hide not thy face from the prayer of thy servant, O Master. Beautiful prayer by Enoch. Chapter 85, and after this I saw another dream, and I will show the whole dream to thee, my son. And Enoch lifted up his voice and spake to his son Methuselah, to thee, my son, will I speak. Hear my words, incline thy ear to the dream, vision of thy father. Before I took thy mother Edna, I saw in a vision on my bed, and behold, a bull came forth from the earth, and that bull was white. And after it came forth a heifer, and along with this latter came forth two bulls, one of them black and the other red. And that black bull gored out the red one, and pursued him over the earth. And thereupon I could no longer see that red bull. So the vision, a bull came forth, Adam came forth from the earth. He was white. After that, Eve came forth, the heifer. Along with this came forth two bulls, one of them black and the other red. And the black bull Cain gored the red one, Abel. Red bull was gone. But that black bull grew, and that heifer went with him. And I saw that many oxen proceeded from him, which resembled and followed him. And that cow, that first one, went from the presence of that first bull in order to seek that red one, but found him not, and lamented with a great lamentation over him, and sought him. And I looked till that first bull came to her and quieted her, and from that time onward she cried no more. So Adam quieted Eve. After that she bore another white bull, Seth, and after him she bore many bulls and black cows. And I saw in my sleep that white bull likewise grow and become a great white bull, and from him proceeded many white bulls, and they resembled him. And they began to beget many white bulls, which resembled them, one following the other, even many. And again I saw, it's 86, chapter 86. And again I saw with my eyes as I slept, and I saw the heaven above, and behold, a star fell from heaven, and it arose and ate and pastured amongst those oxen. And after that I saw the large and the black oxen, and behold, they all changed their stalls and pastures and their cattle, and began to live with each other. And again I saw in the vision, and looked toward the heaven, and behold, I saw many stars descend and cast themselves down from heaven to that first star. And they became bulls amongst those cattle, and pastured with them amongst them. Angels fallen from heaven, fallen angels, stars descend. And I looked at them and saw, and behold, they all let out their privy members like horses, and began to cover the cows of the oxen. And they all became pregnant, and bare elephants, camels, and asses, giants, different classes of giants, elephant class giants, camel class giants, and ass class giants. And all the oxen feared them, all the men, and were affrighted at them, and began to bite with their teeth, and to devour, and to gore with their horns. And they began moreover to devour those oxen, and behold, all the children of the earth began to tremble and quake before them, and to flee from them. The giants began to oppress men. Genesis 6, Enoch chapter 6, also in Jubilees. And again I saw how they began to gore each other and to devour each other, chapter 87. And the earth began to cry aloud, and I raised mine eyes again to heaven, and I saw in the vision, and behold, there came forth from heaven beings who were like white men. And 4 went forth from that place, and 3 with them. So beings from heaven like white men. 4, there's 7 archangels, so 4, 3. Those 3 that had last come forth grasped me by my hand and took me up away from the generations of the earth and raised me up to a lofty place. So yeah, the archangels. And showed me a tower raised above the earth, and all the hills were lower. And one said unto me, Remain here till thou seest everything that befalls those elephants, camels, and asses, and the stars, and the oxen, and all of them. So Enoch saw all of it. Chapter 88. And I saw one of those 4 who had come forth first, and he seized that first star which had fallen from heaven, and bound it hand and foot, and cast it into an abyss. He said, Bind Azazel hand and foot. Let's see, back here. See, I think it's chapter, what's it, 13? Let's see, 13. That didn't help any. Alright, go to 13. $14. And I drew 9. Now maybe it's in Jubilees, but it tells you that he sends the archangel to bind Azazel and cast him into the abyss. And one of them drew a sword and gave it to those elephants and camels and asses, and they began to smite each other, and the whole earth quaked because of them. And the next archangel was given instructions to make them fight each other and kill each other off, all the giants. And as I was beholding in the vision, lo, one of those 4 who had come forth stoned them from heaven, and gathered and took all the great stars, whose privy members were like those of horses, and bound them all hand and foot, and cast them in an abyss of the earth. So another angel was sent out. And 89. And one of those 4 went to that white bull and instructed him in a secret without his being terrified. He was born a bull and became a man, built for himself a great vessel, and dwelt thereon, and 3 bulls dwelt with him in that vessel, and they were covered in. That's Noah and the ark. And again I raised mine eyes toward heaven, and saw a lofty roof with 7 water torrents thereon, and those torrents flowed with much water into an enclosure. And I saw again, and behold, fountains were open on the surface of that great enclosure, and that water began to swell and rise upon the surface, you see, in the earth filled with water. And I saw that enclosure till all its surface was covered with water. Yeah, it's not a globe, it's an enclosed, it's enclosed. It is enclosed, very similar to this, filled up with water. And the water, the darkness, and the mist increased upon it. And as I looked at the height of that water had risen above the height of that enclosure, and was streaming over that enclosure. and it stood upon the earth, and all the cattle of that enclosure were gathered together until I saw how they sank and were swallowed up and perished in that water. So the flood destroyed them all. But that vessel floated on the water, while all the oxen and elephants and camels and asses sank to the bottom with all the animals, so that I could no longer see them, and they were not able to escape, but perished and sank into the depths. Another witness, the Dead Sea Scrolls says no giant survived. Another witness that no giant survived. They all died. They did not survive the flood. And again I saw in the vision till those water torrents were removed from that high roof, and the chasm of the earth were leveled up, and other abysses were open. Then the water began to run down into these till the earth became visible. But that vessel settled on the earth, and the darkness retired, and light appeared. But that white bull which had become a man came out of that vessel, and the 3 bulls with him. And one of those 3 was white like that bull, and one of them was red as blood, and one black. And that white bull departed from them. And it's very interesting that Shem was righteous as Noah. Japheth was given the northern cold area. Ham was given the southern hot area. And they began to bring forth beasts of the field and birds, so that there arose different genera: lions, tigers, wolves, dogs, hyenas, wild boars, foxes, squirrels, swines, falcons, vultures, kites, eagles, and ravens. And among them was born a white bull. So this is talking about people. And they began to bite one another, but that white bull which was born amongst them begat a wild ass, and a white bull with it, and the wild asses multiplied. But that bull which was born from him begat black wild boar and white sheep, and the former begat many boars, but that sheep begat 12 sheep. So who's the 12 sheep? 12 tribes of Jacob. Wild asses. Let's say the black wild boar and a white sheep. Black wild boar, Esau. Wild asses, Ishmael. White bull, Isaac. When those 12 sheep had grown, they gave up one of them to the asses, and those asses again gave up that sheep to the wolves. So the Ishmaelites got Joseph, gave him up to the wolves, the Egyptians, and that sheep grew up among the wolves. And Yahweh brought the 11 sheep to live with it. The other brothers came to Egypt to live with it, and to pasture with it among the wolves. And they multiplied and became many flocks of sheep. And the wolves began to fear them, and they oppressed them until they destroyed their little ones. And they cast their young into a river of much water. Where was Moses at? She saved him in the river, but they were killing their young. But those sheep began to cry aloud on account of their little ones, and to complain unto Yahweh. And a sheep which had been saved from the wolves, Moses, wolves, Egyptians, fled and escaped to the wild asses, Ishmaelites. And I saw the sheep, how they lamented and cried and besought their master with all their might, till that Lord of the sheep descended at the voice of the sheep from a lofty abode, and came to them and pastured them. And he called that sheep which had escaped the wolves, so the burning bush, and spake with it concerning the wolves, that it should admonish them not to touch the sheep. So it didn't say that angel came down, because you can clearly see in the other verses the angel came down. It says Lord of the sheep descended at the voice of the sheep from the lofty abode. Yahusha spoke to Moses in the burning bush. The word should admonish them, spake with it concerning the wolves, that it should admonish them not to touch the sheep. So the Egyptians don't mess with the Hebrews. And the sheep went to the wolves according to the word of Yahweh. And another sheep met it and went with it. And two went and entered together into the assembly of those wolves, Moses and Aaron, and spake with them and admonished them not to touch the sheep from henceforth. And thereupon I saw the wolves, and how they oppressed the sheep exceedingly with all their power, and the sheep, Hebrews, cried aloud, and Yahweh came to the sheep, and they began to smite those wolves, Egyptians. And the wolves began to make lamentation, but the sheep became quiet, and forthwith ceased to cry out. And I saw the sheep, the Hebrews, till they departed from amongst the wolves. But the eyes of the wolves were blinded, and those wolves departed in pursuit of the sheep with all their power. And Yahweh the sheep went with them as their leader, and all his sheep followed him, and his face was dazzling and glorious and terrible to behold. So those Egyptians departed in pursuit of the Hebrews, or Israelites. Yahweh of the sheep went with them as their leader. But the wolves began to pursue those sheep till they reached the sea of water. And that sea was divided, and the water stood on this side and on that before their face. And their Lord, their master, led them and placed himself between them and the wolves. The pillar of smoke and pillar of fire, Yahusha, placed himself. And also Yahuwah went with them, Yahusha. And as those wolves did not yet see the sheep, they proceeded into the midst of the sea, and the wolves followed the sheep, and those wolves ran after them into that sea. And when they saw the Yahusha, they turned to flee before his face, but that sea gathered itself together and became as it had been created. And the water swelled and rose till it covered those wolves, and I saw till all the wolves who pursued those sheep perished and were drowned. So Enoch knows more than most people today. Very good details here of exactly what happened. They can change the other scriptures as much as they want, but the account of Enoch, bam, y'all. They perished and drowned in the sea. But the sheep escaped from that water and went forth into a wilderness where there was no water and no grass. And they began to open their eyes and to see. And I saw Yahweh the sheep pasturing them and giving them water and grass, and that sheep going and leading them. And that sheep ascended to the summit of that lofty rock. So Moses and Yahweh the sheep sent it to them. And after that I saw Yahusha, who stood before them, and his appearance was great and terrible and majestic, and all those sheep saw him and were afraid before his face. And they all feared and trembled because of him, and they cried to that sheep with them which was amongst them, We are not able to stand before our master, or to behold him. And that sheep which led them again ascended to the summit of that rock. But the sheep began to be blinded, and to wander from the way which he had showed them, but that sheep was not thereof. And Yahusha of the sheep, Yahusha, was wrathful exceedingly against them, and that sheep discovered it and went down from the summit of the rock. So Moses came down from the rock and came to the sheep, and found the greatest part of them blinded and fallen away. That's the golden calf incident. And when they saw it, they feared and trembled at his presence, and desired to return to their folds. And that sheep took other sheep with it, and came to those sheep which have fallen away, and began to slay them. See, Moses gave the order to kill some of them. And the sheep feared its presence, and thus that sheep brought back those sheep that had fallen away, and they returned to their folds. Still talking about the Hebrews, Israelites. And I saw in this vision till that sheep became a man, and built a house for Yahusha, and placed all the sheep in that house. And I saw till this sheep which had been met with that sheep which led them fell asleep. So he built the ark and the tent of the tabernacle, and Moses died. And I saw till all the great sheep perished, and little ones arose in their place, and they came to a pasture and approached a stream of water. Then that sheep, their leader, which had become a man, withdrew from them and fell asleep. So that was, and all the sheep. Got to be Joshua. And all the sheep saw it and cried over it with great crying. And I saw till they left off crying from that sheep and crossed that stream of water. Now Joshua crossed over with them. Maybe still talking about Moses here. That sheep which led them fell asleep. Oh. I think Moses here first. Or Aaron here first, and then Moses. Yeah, I think so. And there arose, let's see, I saw till they left off crying for that sheep and crossed that stream of water, and there arose the 2 sheep as leaders in the place of those which had led them and fallen asleep. 2 leaders, 2 sheep as leaders, Caleb and Joshua, because they were the 2 that went to spy out the promised land, and the only 2 that gave a good report. And I saw till the sheep came to a goodly place, in a pleasant and glorious land, and I saw till those sheep were satisfied, and that house stood amongst them in the pleasant land. And sometimes their eyes were open, and sometimes blinded, till another sheep arose and led them, and brought them all back, and their eyes were opened. And the dogs and the foxes and the wild boars began to devour those sheep, till the Yahweh of the sheep, Yahusha, raised up another sheep, a ram from their midst, which led them. And that ram began to butt on either side those dogs and foxes and wild boars, till he had destroyed them all. Ram. Is that Saul? And that sheep whose eyes were open saw that ram, which was amongst the sheep, till it forsook its glory and began to butt those sheep and trampled upon them and behaved itself unseemly. And Yahweh of the sheep, Yahusha, sent the lamb to another lamb and raised it to being a ram and leader of the sheep instead of that ram which had forsaken its glory. Yeah, so this is next is David to replace Saul. And it went to it and spake to it alone and raised it to being a ram and made it the prince and leader of the sheep. But during all these things, those dogs oppressed the sheep. And the first ram pursued that second ram. Yeah, Saul pursued David. And that second ram arose and fled before it. And I saw till those dogs pulled down the first ram. And that second ram arose and led the little sheep. And those sheep grew and multiplied. But all the dogs and foxes and wild boars feared and fled before it. Not sure about the dogs, foxes, and wild boars. Could be Philistines. And that ram butted and killed the wild beasts. And those wild beasts had no longer any power among the sheep, and robbed them no more of aught. And that ram begot many sheep and fell asleep. And a little sheep became ram in its stead, and became prince and leader of those sheep. And that house became great and broad, and it was built for those sheep. And so that would be Solomon, I believe. And that house built for those sheep. A tower lofty and great was built on the house for Yahusha, Yahuwah of the sheep. And that house was low, but the tower was elevated and lofty. And the Lord of the sheep stood on that tower, and they offered a full table before him. So yeah, that's well, I guess I didn't even read that. All right, Charles has got a synopsis here. I think he's about right on that. Building of the temple, yeah. And Yep. And again I saw those sheep that they again erred and went many ways and forsook that their house. And Yahusha called some from amongst the sheep and sent them to the sheep, but the sheep began to slay them. And one of them was saved and was not slain, and it sped away and cried aloud of the sheep. And they sought to slay it, but Yahuwah of the sheep saved it from the sheep and brought it up to me and caused it to dwell there. And many other sheep he sent to those sheep to testify unto them and lament over them. So he sent the prophets to tell them of their errors. And after that I saw, when they forsook the house of Yahweh and his tower, they fell away entirely, and their eyes were blinded. And that's interesting. It says his tower. See, the scriptures say house. Where do you get tower? How he wrought. Abraham had a tower in the removed books. And I saw Yahuwah of the sheep, how he wrought much slaughter amongst them in their herds, until those sheep invited that slaughter and betrayed his place. And he gave them over into the hands of lions and tigers and wolves, wolves being Egyptians, and hyenas, and into the land of the foxes, and to all the wild beasts. And those wild beasts began to tear in pieces those sheep. And I saw that he forsook their house and their tower, and gave them all into the hands of the lions to tear and devour them, into the hand of all the wild beasts. So the lions could be the Assyrians, because they conquered the northern kingdom before the southern kingdom. And I began to cry aloud with all my power, and to appeal to Yahuwah of the sheep, to represent to him in regard to the sheep, that they were devoured by all the wild beasts. But he remained unmoved, though he saw it, and rejoiced that they were devoured and swallowed and robbed, and left them to be devoured in the hand of all the beasts. And he called 70 shepherds, and cast those sheep to them, that they might pasture them. And he spake to the shepherds and their companions, let each individual of you pasture the sheep henceforth, and everything that I shall command you, that do you. And I will deliver them over unto you duly numbered, and tell you which of them are to be destroyed, and them destroy ye. And he gave them over unto them those sheep. And he called another and spake unto him, observe and mark everything that the shepherds will do to those sheep, for they will destroy more of them than I have commanded them. And every excess and the destruction which will be wrought through the shepherds, record, namely how many they destroy according to my command, and how many according to their own caprice. Record against every individual shepherd all the destruction he effects, and read out before me by number how many they destroy, and how many they deliver over for destruction, that I may have this as a testimony against them, and know every deed of the shepherds, that I may comprehend and see what they do, whether or not they abide by my command which I have commanded them. But they shall not know it, and thou shalt not declare it to them, nor admonish them, but only record against each individual all the destruction which the shepherds effect, each in his time, and lay it all before me. And I saw till those shepherds pastured in their season, and they began to slay and to destroy more than they were bidden. And they delivered those sheep into the hands of the lions, and the lions and tigers eat and devoured the greater part of those sheep, and the wild boars eat along with them. And they burnt that tower and demolished that house. And I became exceedingly sorrowful over that tower, because the house of the sheep was demolished. And afterwards I was unable to see if those sheep entered that house. And what does he say here? 2 kingdoms, Israel and Judah, to the destruction of Jerusalem. Yeah. That's what I was kind of thinking there. Some of it's clear to me. Some of it's hard to understand. First time I read that, I was like, what in the world? Praise Yah, I can understand some of it now. And the shepherds and their associates delivered over those sheep to all the wild beasts to devour them, and each one of them received in his time a definite number. It was written by the other in a book, how many of each one of them destroyed of them. And he's got here, first period of angelic rulers, from the destruction of Jerusalem to the return from the captivity. And each one slew and destroyed many more than was prescribed, and I began to weep and lament on account of those sheep. And thus in the vision I saw that one who wrote, how he wrote down every one that was destroyed by those shepherds, day by day, and carried up and laid down, and showed actually the whole book of Yahweh the sheep, even everything that they had done, and all that each one of them had made away with, and all that they had given over to destruction. And the book was read before Yahweh of the sheep, and he took the book from his hand and read it and sealed it and laid it down. Second period, from the time of Cyrus to that of Alexander the Great. And forthwith I saw how the shepherds pastured for 12 hours, and behold, 3 of those sheep turned back, and came and entered and began to build up all that had fallen down of that house. But the wild boars tried to hinder them, but they were not able. And Charles is off on that. Well, he might not be off on it. This is Ezra. Ezra coming back from Babylon to rebuild the house. And they began to build as before, and they reared up that tower, and it was named the High Tower. And they began again to place a table before the tower, but all the bread on it was polluted and not pure. And as touching all this, the eyes of those sheep were blinded, so that they saw not, and the eyes of their shepherds likewise. And they delivered them in large numbers to their shepherds for destruction, and they trampled the sheep with their feet and devoured them. Hold on. Maybe I missed one. Let's see here. Ezra's got to be 2 kingdoms of Israel and Judah to the destruction of Jerusalem. Right, so they were dispersed, destruction of Jerusalem, to the return of from captivity, 71. This may be Ezra here. Yeah. Forthwith I saw how they pastured for 12 hours, build up all that had fallen down. Yep, Ezra. Build as before, as the shepherds likewise. And delivered them in large numbers to their shepherds for destruction. They trampled the sheep with their feet and devoured them. And Yahusha of the sheep remained unmoved till all the sheep were dispersed over the field and mingled with them. And they did not save them out of the hand of the beast. And this one who wrote the book carried it up and showed it and read it before Yahuwah of the sheep, and implored him on their account, and besought him on their account, as he showed him all the doings of the shepherds, and gave testimony before him against all the shepherds. And he took the actual book and laid it down beside him and departed. They were dispersed again. And I saw that this is 90, in this manner 35 shepherds undertook the pasturing of the sheep, and they severally completed their periods as did the first, and others received them into their hands to pasture them for their period, each shepherd in his own period. And after that I saw in my vision all the birds of heaven coming, the eagles, the vultures, the kites, the ravens, but the eagles led all the birds, and they began to devour those sheep, and to pick out their eyes, and to devour their flesh. And the sheep cried out because their flesh was being devoured by the birds. And as for me, I looked and lamented in my sleep over that shepherd who pastured the sheep. And I saw until those sheep were devoured by the dogs, eagles, and kites. And they left neither flesh nor skin nor sinew remaining on them till only their bones stood there. And that's interesting. The prophecy of Ezekiel, he has the bones prophesied to the bones. Like a type. Yeah, Ezekiel 37:4. Again he said unto me, prophesy unto these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of Yahuwah. Yeah. Thus said Yahuwah unto these bones, Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and you shall live. And I will lay sinews upon you, and will bring flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and you shall live, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah. So I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I prophesied there was a noise, and behold a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to his bone. And when I beheld, lo, the sinews and the flesh came upon them, and the skin covered them above, but there was no breath in them. Then said he unto me, Prophesy unto the wind, prophesy, son of man, and say to the wind, Thus saith Yahuwah, Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived, and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army. Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, Our bones are dried, and our hope is lost. We are cut off from our parts. Therefore prophesy, and say unto them, Thus saith Yahuwah, Behold, O my people, I will open your graves, and cause you to come up out of your graves, and bring you into the land of Israel. And you shall know that I am Yahuwah, when I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves. And shall put my spirit in you, and you shall live, and I shall place you in your own land. Then shall you know that I am Yahuwah. I, Yahuwah, have spoken it, and performed it, saith Yahuwah. The word of Yahuwah came again unto me. Yahusha, the word. So, that's interesting. And, wrong one. Here we go. And their bones too fell to the earth, and the sheep became few. And I saw until 23 had undertaken the pasturing and completed in their several periods 58 times. So he's got Alexander Great to Greco-Syrian domination. Till 58 times. But behold, lambs were born by those white sheep, and they began to open their eyes and to see and to cry to the sheep. Yea, they cried to them, but they did not hearken to what they said to them, but were exceedingly deaf, and their eyes were very exceedingly blinded. And I saw in the vision how the ravens flew upon those lambs, and took one of those lambs, and dashed the sheep in pieces, and devoured them. And I saw till horns grew upon those lambs, and the ravens cast down their horns. And I saw till there sprouted a great horn of one of those sheep, and their eyes were open. And I looked at them, and their eyes opened. And it cried to the sheep, and the rams saw it, and all ran to it. And notwithstanding all this, those eagles and vultures and ravens and kites still kept tearing the sheep, and swooping down upon them and devouring them. Still the sheep remained silent, but the rams lamented and cried out. And those ravens fought and battled with it, and sought to lay low its horn, but they had no power over it. And I saw till the shepherds and eagles and those vultures and kites came, and they cried to the ravens that they should break the horn of that ram. And they battled and fought with it, and it battled with them, and cried that its help might come. And I saw till a great sword was given to the sheep, and the sheep proceeded against all the beasts of the field to slay them, and all the beasts and the birds of heaven fled before their face. And I saw till that man who wrote down the names of the shepherds and carried up the presence of Yahuwah of the sheep came and helped it, and showed it everything he had come down for the help of that ram. And I saw till Yahuwah the sheep came unto them in wrath, and all who saw him fled, and they all fell into his shadow from before his face. So we transition from behold lambs, white sheep. The ravens flew upon those lambs, and took one of those lambs, and dashed the sheep in pieces and devoured it. That be Yahusha. The ravens, the Romans. I great horn of one of those sheep. It really, a great sword was given to the sheep. This is end times here. I'm at a loss for this. And I saw to that man who wrote down the names of the shepherds, carry the presence of the Lord of the sheep, come down and help of that ram. I saw till Yahuwah the sheep came upon them in wrath, and all who saw him fled, and they all fell into a shadow from before his face. I saw till a throne was erected in the pleasant, this is the end. I saw till a throne was erected in the pleasant land, and Yahuwah the sheep sat himself thereon, Yahusha. And the other took the sealed books and opened those books before Yahuwah of the sheep, Yahusha. And Yahusha called those men the 7 first white ones, and commanded them they should bring before him, beginning with the first star which led the way, all the star whose privy members were like those of horses, and they brought them all before him. And he said to that man who wrote before him, being one of those 7 white ones, and said unto him, take those 70 shepherds to whom I delivered the sheep, and who taking on their own authority slew more than I commanded them, and behold, they were all bound, and I saw, and they all stood before him, and the judgment was held first over the stars, and they were judged and found guilty, and went to the place of condemnation, and they were cast into an abyss full of fire and flaming, and full of pillars of fire. And those 70 shepherds were judged and found guilty, and they were cast in that fiery abyss. And I saw at that time how like abyss was open in the midst of the earth, full of fire, and they brought those blinded sheep, and they were all judged and found guilty, and cast into the fiery abyss, and they were burned. Now this abyss was to the right of that house. And I saw those sheep burning, and their bones burning. And I stood up to see till they folded up that old house, and carried off all the pillars, and all the beams and ornaments of the house were at the same time folded up with it. And they carried it off, and laid it in a place in the south of the land. And I saw till Yahuwah of the sheep brought a new house, greater and loftier than the first, and set it up in the place of the first, which had been folded up. All its pillars were new, and its ornaments were new and larger than those of the first. The old one which had taken away, and all the sheep were within it. So it's New Jerusalem. And New Jerusalem. Revelation 21:2, and I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from Yahuwah out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I saw all the sheep which had been left, all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of heaven, falling down and doing homage to those sheep, and making petition to and obeying them in everything. And thereafter those 3 who were clothed in white had seized me by my hand, who had taken me up before, and the hand of that ram also seizing hold of me. They took me up and set me down in the midst of those sheep before the judgment took place. And those sheep were all white, and their wool was abundant and clean. Got the white robes on. And all that had been destroyed and dispersed, and all the beasts of the field, and all the birds of the heaven assembled in that house, and Yahuwah of the sheep, Yahusha, rejoiced with great joy, because they were all good, and had returned to his house. And I saw till they laid down that sword which had been given to the sheep, and they brought it back into the house, and it was sealed before the presence of Yahuwah. And all the sheep were invited into that house, but it held them not. And the eyes of them were opened, and they saw that house was large and broad and very full. And I saw a white bull was born with large horns, and all the beasts of the field and all birds of the air feared him, and made petition to him all the time. And I saw till all their generations were transformed, and they all became white bulls. And the first among them became a lamb, and that lamb became a great animal, and had great black horns on its head. And Yahusha rejoiced over it, and over all the oxen. And I slept in their midst, and I awoke and saw everything. This is the vision which I saw while I slept. And I awoke and blessed Yahuwah of righteousness, and gave him glory. Then I wept with a great weeping, and my tears stayed not, till I could no longer endure it. When I saw, they flowed on account of what I had seen, for everything shall come and be fulfilled, and all the deeds of men in their order were shown to me. On that night I remembered the first dream, and because of it I wept and was troubled, because I had seen that vision. Could you imagine seeing what Enoch saw in a dream? The entire history of creation from beginning to end. What? Yeah, right. Blow my pea brain away. I'm going to check on something here because this is the reason that this is very helpful. Thank you to the God Culture team for their excellent work here. So you can go to chapter 9, because they definitely have some more insight than Charles did. So Esdras. Syrians opposed the temple, halting progress. Temple building renewed. Enoch 89:74. Medo-Persia is conquered by the Greek Empire. Judea is taken over peacefully. Greece never devours the temple. The Maccabees do. 75. Yahuwah the sheep remained unmoved till all the sheep were dispersed over the field and mingled with them. The beast and the shepherds did not save them out of the hand of the beast. This one carried up and wrote the book. Yeah. And you look over here. Temple is defiled and Judea subdued. Confederation of birds of prey are joined by Philistines, dogs. See, that's interesting. Good insight. The Qumran local writings to condemn the Hasmoneans and Pharisees, sons of darkness, wicked priests. They were exceedingly blinded. Yep. Let's see. Great horn. Messiah is born as the Son of Man. Great horn of one of those sheep. I need to study this out more. Ravens, Pharisees, Samaritan priest, usurped temple. Sought to kill Messiah. Notice the ravens are Lay Lewis horn. I can't see that. Oh, here we go. Good grief. Ravens are the lead. Yeshua would be crucified, but he rose and conquered. Enoch skips to the end. However, the end times are even more important. Okay, so that's what threw me off. It skipped. Like I'm reading one part and then bam, it skips to the end. And I knew it was the end. That threw me off big time. So, very interesting. Good insight, God Culture. Let's see what we got here. Concluding section of the book. So 92 to whatever that is. That's 92. Yep. All right. So we'll stop there. Hopefully that was helpful and a blessing. And praise Yah for the insight and His word. And